good morning to one and all. Today we want to take the class of managerial economics relating to the types of economics and differences between these types, and also nature and importance and the significance of the managerial economics. So the first we'll see what are the types of the managerial economics, where we can see here the managerial economics itself, or the economics, the nature or the traditional economics itself consisting of the two parts. So where we can say these two parts, one is the microeconomics, where we can say that the study of the individual consumers or the firm is called as microeconomics. This is also called as a theory of the firm. So here the micro, in the sense we can say like tiny, means very small, or we can say like any individual. So here the economic itself reads as a one type, like as an individual consumer, individual organization or individual firm. So here all the activities or the problems enumerated relating to an individual person or individual organizations comes under these microeconomics. So this is called, as we consider that individuality as an individual or a single form of an industry. So that's why we'll say that microeconomics deals with the behavior and the problems where it was enumerated to the single individuals or maybe a micro-organization. Means micro-organization in the sense an individual organization. So we consider here the micro means very small or related to the only one organization. So when we concerns relating to the applications of these microeconomics, where we can say like it will deals with the different concepts of every organizations. So when you comes across the different concepts of the every organizations, first the main thing in these concepts of the organizations is called as price theory. So we can see here the price theory means the main basic requirement of any production activity is to decide the price. So what price has to be decided there? So if you don't decide the price, so we don't know how much the amount to be sold in an individual goods. The price depends upon the nature of the production activity, as it's consisting of the total cost of the production plus profits. So we can say here cost plus profit. So which is called as comes under the price. So every organizations, whatever may be the type of the organization, first they decides the price, which includes the organizational first goal, which is called as profit making. So the micro, in the sense individual firms decides the what is the total cost of the organization and also the profits of the organization. And the next when you comes under the second aspects like law of demand. So what is a demand? So when we has been enumerated for any goods, what the market is or how much a market is required for an individual goods, or maybe one organization production of a one type of goods, how much quantity does the market is required. So that's we'll call it as a demand. So we have any different aspects in the law of the demand, which states that there is an inverse relationship between the demand and supply. So here the every concepts related to the individual organizations and its product, its demand in the market and its supply. So all these aspects will cover in this law of demand. And the next one we can call like the third one like theory of market structures. So we have to see that once we find out the price of an organization, and at the same time when we have seen the demand, so how much goods that market is required and how much the organization has to supply to the market, then we have to see that our goods was going into the which market structure. So we have any different types of market structures in the external environments, which we can call like maybe the perfect competition and imperfect competition itself, consisting of monopoly, oligopoly and duopoly. So different market structures requires different types on the pattern of demand and supply. So here we has to enumerate, so which theory fits to my organization as in a single organization. So which theory when I can fit to my organization. And the next one we can comes under the theory of cost of production. Yes, sir. So here we can see the production and cost, we can say like the cost of production. So what sort of, how many units of the goods we are producing in an organization? What is the cost related to that production? We should identify in the theory of production. And also at the same way here we can come across the long run and short run production functions, where based upon that the variation in the cost structure will also be taken place. So it's also related to an individual organization or an individual firm. And the next one comes under the theory of profits. So here the primary motive of every organization is to earn the profits. So as an individual firm or an organization, we has to identify here that what rate of profits we are getting. So we have any different types of profits, maybe like normal profits, abnormal profits, and supernormal profits. So we should identify that which stage our company is there and what type of arrangement should be made in order to satisfy the overall stakeholders of the organization. As the profit is one of the important motive of the each and every stakeholders to look at of an organization. Yes, so these are the different things which we can come across on a microeconomic theory. Next, the clarification of the second type of market or the second type of economic was the macroeconomic. So macroeconomic, it is the study of aggregate or the total level of economic activities in the country is called macro. So we can say macro means the large, where we can identify or where we can say it is called as a large, means consisting of all the things. Aggregate means total, each and every firm. For example, if I had taken a firm of a cement industry. So micro is a sense where one company is called in the micro element. But when you comes from the macro, all the companies means micro one. For example, Bharat Cement Limited, it is a micro firm. But when you comes under the macro, all the cement industry may be related to the Telangana or maybe within the country comes under the macro elements. So here we can say that it enumerates the all total level of economic activities is called as macroeconomics. So these macroeconomics will provide us the necessary framework in terms of government policies. So why you require to know about this macro element means, as the micro firm itself will use as an individual perspective that where is the organization or what the organization is going through. But when I want to see what is the total industry is going, how far the total industry is better, good or requirement for the government. So these has to be enumerated only when you have understood the macroeconomic environment. So that's why these macroeconomics or always it will tells us the government requirements. It will fulfills the what is in a structure provided relating to the different firms within a framework. So that's why it will give us the important information regarding the government policy. Last time I have told regarding the cement industry. So when I think about micro, only one industry is affected in the micro element. But macro, the government policies means a normal policies which was given to the throughout the country. So each and every cement industry will affected by the policy what the government has been given. So here we can say that the total national level or state level policies which is applicable to each and every person, each and every industry or firm comes under the macro element. So these macroeconomics will deals with not only with the government policies, it includes the national income analysis. What is the national income? So we used to identify these national income in the sense like GDP. This is gross domestic products. So the gross domestic products is the total products what we have been produced within the country. So when I want to see what is the country's GDP, I must and should know what is the total national income of the country. So when in the micro we have an individual personal income, when I add the total incomes of the individuals within the country, we can get the national income. So here it's these government policies required to frame or to identify that what the total national income was, and based upon that income only we are able to identify the GDP, that is gross domestic products, which has been getting. And at the same way we have to identify the balance of payments, which you naturally call as BOP. So in order to balance the internal and external trade of a country, that is imports and the exports, so we should balance the both in order to go for the free or a good economical development of a country. Why? Because if incoming imports are more and outgoing exports are less, automatically it leads to the imbalance of trade. So imbalance will lead to the downward trends of the economical analysis of every country. So that's why whatever we are going outside, that is balance of the payments is 100% required in order to maintain the good GDP, that is gross domestic products of an every country. And the next one we can come across by seeing that theory of total output and employment. So here when we are seeing about a macro element as a country overall or a large overall, when we are enumerating here we have to identify the national income and what sort of goods are coming and going outside. So in this environment, we should identify that what is our total output or the produced goods and services in the country. And at the same way, this production level is meeting with our employment opportunities. Why? Because the employment opportunities creation is a framework or the way for the production activities. So we have to identify there are the different types of theories which we have to see that the employment opportunities are creating and which should be correlated with the total output of the every country. So that's why in the macro element these the employment and output is also one of the important element which we has to be considered. And the next we comes under the theory of inflation. Inflation in the sense we'll call as rise in price. So rise in price. So rise in price means increasing in each and every aspects, maybe the production prices of the raw materials and goods and services will be increases, which will be gives or which will be tells us like increase in the price of the certain goods. So when we increase the price of the goods and services, we consider it as inflation. So we have to identify that what is the theory of inflation in case of macro element. Why? Because rising price doesn't affect only one part or maybe the one organization. Yes, sir. So we have to identify that rising prices will affect the total nation. Maybe it gives effect upon one sector. For example, the prices of the vegetables or the has been increased. So totally it will affects the total markets of one state or the country. So here the theory of inflation which give effects upon the balance of payments and also deals with the supply of the goods and services. So we have to identify as the rise in price is also one of the another element which we has to be identified in macro economic analysis. Next, on this we can see like the trade cycles. So what are the trade cycles? Means these are also called as business cycles. So as we say that there are the different stages in the business, maybe like from birth of the to the death or the total maturity of the production. So the trade cycles will tells us that we can identify, you can see like the trade cycles will be like these. So where you can have a slang that where we should identify that where the prices or the supply will be having some sort of stability. Yes, sir. So this stability should be there. So we should identify where the prices or the production capacity will increases and the where the downwards trend will be there, and such that we can identify with the help of the theory the stability of the prices and the stability of the productions. And the next one we can come across like economic growth. So when we want to identify the economic growth of every country has to consider all above macro factors relating to national income, BOP, inflation, employment, trade cycles, and also consider like GDP, gross domestic products. So each and every area in these macro elements considerate the economic growth of the country. That economically, when these are well favorable to the nation, we can say that they are growing or the economical development of the country is good. Or if these elements, we can see the downwards trends and these elements like employment, there is no chances of employment, inflation is high, and in the trade cycles, the depressions are there. Automatically, we can say that the macro elements, all the elements are in a reverse trend, then we can say it is like underdeveloping of the economy. So we can see here there are the two types of economics like micro and macro, and these are the factors which are affecting this micro and macro environment. Next we can see like what are the main differences between these micro and macro elements. So when I said these micro means it is a tiny one, that is very small. Macro means it is a very large or consisting of all the elements. So first we'll see the first difference of these micro and macro economics. So the first one is microeconomics means already we learned it studies about an individual units. Means only one firm or the one organization or the one thing. But when you differentiated this micro with macro, we can see that it will relates to the studies of the total economy, where we can say it is like aggregate. That is clubbing of all the individuals will get an aggregate one. So one firm, one in company, we'll call it as a firm. When I add all the companies, we'll call it as an industry, which we'll say is like as an aggregate. Yes. Next one, when you comes under these differentiations, here the microeconomics will primarily deals with the individual perspective only. That is a firm's or an individual person's income, output or prices of the goods or any other factors or the problems related to an individual perspective. But when you comes under the macro, the main differentiation is it will tells about an aggregate of the total output, total income as well as the general price levels. Means in the macro only a single or an individual perspective. But when it comes under the macro, where we can identify that total addition or aggregation of each and element. Maybe when I say about one state income in the micro, but when I comes under the macro, I'll add all the states of India and I'll say the income of India, that is as the national income or national output. And next, the third differentiation between this micro and a macro is microeconomics will mainly focuses upon the overcoming issues which will mainly concerns of allocation of the resources and price discrimination of an individual firm or an individual requirement. Means it will speak about to how to overcome or how to solve the problems, maybe which will concerns with the different types of allocating the resources or maybe differentiation in the prices of the goods and services. So how an individual firm will faces or face the challenges of different discriminations of pricing and allocation of resources. But when you say in the macro, it will totally focus upon the upholding issues, means not at in a single one. It will give us an issues like total employment. So what happens if employment decreases in the country? What sort of downward trends or underdevelopment will go? So how the national income to be increased, or what type of things should be done in order to make our GDP, gross domestic product, or the national income to be gross. So like this, we has to consider the issues relating to the overall nations like employment, national household incomes, and other problems, and getting some solutions for challenging these problems at a macro level. Doesn't say that a one or two. These are related to the all the sectors and all the things within the nation. And the next one we can say like these micro accounting or the microeconomics will relates to the factors like demand and supply of a particular commodity. When I say it is like an individual perspective, so it is like an individual commodity. So what happens when you take in a regular sales? Nowadays we used to identify that rise in prices. So one commodity, so in the olden days like in 90s, when the one rise in the price of onions has been demolished, the government of India, one of the government, the NDA government has been dropped due to unable to control the onion prices once. So we can identify here that the price, that is rising the prices of the commodities, on the supply and the demand of the commodities to be verified for an individual. But when it comes under the macro element or the macro perspective, it relates to the total nations. So what example I have told relating to the onions, when the price was increased, the central government of NDA, that is Vajpayee government, has been dropped down. Why? The government was unable to control the prices. So here in the micro element, we have seen only the supply was shortage related to the onions of particular area. So afterwards, that was affected to all the areas or all the states, and automatically affected a nation's government. So we can see here micro relates to a small thing, but it will spread on to the others, and also that shortage will be provided to the all other states or the things, and we can take that individual commodities demand and supply as a macro factor, and aggregate demand and supply will also be changes and affects the any nation's economy. And next, another differentiations where we can picture out in case of microeconomics is it offers a picture of the goods and services that are required for efficient economy. And here the microeconomics also shows how these goods and services might grow in demand in the future. Means it relates to the single goods or the single item, where we can say that improving of the production. So in the future, if the demand is more, so what that sector or the organization has to do in order to increase the production, and what sort of the challenges it was facing, and how to overcome the challenges of an individual firm and increase it the production. But when it comes for the macro element, here it ensures the optimum utilization of the resources available in the country. Here I don't want to talk about an individual firm. Here I want to ensure the total stability of the nation. That means the resources I want to use within the country, means total resources to be perfectly utilized, and the goods and services must and should, without any fluctuations in the demand and the supply, the total people or the individuals of the country must and should know or to get the resources. Means individually, when I speak in the micro manner, a firm's stabilization and meeting of the demand in the future. But when I talk about the macro environment, country's stabilization and meeting or stabilizedly utilization of the resources throughout the nation. And the next differentiations where we can enumerate like the point of equilibriums, which can be achieved by the small scale industries. Here, how a country or a firm, in the micro element, I want to look about a one firm or the one industry, how it will reach its equilibrium. So equilibrium is a status where we have a self-sufficiency. It means at a point where it should be getting a maximum satisfaction for individual or any firm. So where a small scale industry should identify that where we are getting the equilibrium position, that we are having a maximum or minimum cost within a maximum profits, or maybe supply and demand where it meets, we'll call it like in a equilibrium position. So every organization will try to meet its equilibrium positions in order to achieve that a firm's or an organizational objectives. But when it comes as a macro elements, that is aggregate or overall nation here, so these macro element itself, it determines its equilibrium at the level of employment and income of the nations. Means the total employment. So what is the level of the employment and what is the income the people of the nation was getting. So when these two points or the factors meet at a point where the employment level is satisfactory and the income levels of the people not much under the poverty level, but basically they are the middle or the upper state, means when these employment and income of the individual meets, that's we'll call it as an equilibrium stage of a country. So this is the macro elements where I deal with the total nation. And the next item when I want to enumerate relating to this differentiation of micro and macro is its focus upon the issues relating to the price variation and income levels. So individually a firm or an organization, it want to give or it want to enumerate upon what about the variations in the price of an individual products or an individual firm, issues related to the increase of the price or the decrease of the price and its income levels. So naturally we used to think that when the price of the commodity increases, the organization is availing more profits. But it exactly not right. Why? Because sometimes the price increases due to an increase of the raw materials or tax burdens of the governments. So at that time the price will increase, but certainly we can't say that it will increases or it will provides us more profits. So here at micro level it will focus what are the issues related with an individual firms, increasing of the price, factors relating to it, and it also relates with the income levels of an individual perspective. But when it comes under the differentiation of the macro element, where we can say primarily the component of the macro element is leads with the problem of income. So the increased income to the nation or to the individual. Once the individual income level increases, automatically the gross income level of the country will also increases. So here in the macro stage, they will identify that what are the factors or necessary in order to give or create more income for the individuals of the country. Next, for these, when I see the price level variations or the changes which comes under the micro level, like examples like consumer equilibrium, where we can enumerate saying that output generated by the individual's incomes and savings. So how when a consumer get equilibrium? When his incomes has been reached the target, when his income has been reached the target, means he is self-sufficient, needs his requirements meets day to day, and what are the money saving with him? He left some more money. Then he can say he reached the equilibrium. Why? Because he was maintaining his activities or expenditure with his income in a happiest manner, which we'll call as the point where the consumer income and expenditure meets. We'll call it as a consumer equilibrium. But when I say the examples given for the primary components, like for a macro environment, one we say national income and a savings. So when the national income will be increases only when individual saving level will be increases, and about the general price levels and also aggregate demand as well as the supply, poverty and the rate of employment. So these comes under the some of the examples which we have been enumerated under the macro features. So these are the different types or differences where we can mention or where we can say relating to the microeconomics and also the macroeconomics. Next, the next thing we deals with what is the nature of this managerial economics. So we have seen the types of economics in that we have micro, macro and also the differentiations. Now we come across what type of the nature these managerial economics is having. So we have to identify when I want to see this nature, there are the different types of characteristics or there which comes under the managerial nature of the managerial economics. So where we can identify in the picture, where you can identify in the picture like the it is first one we can say in the nature of managerial economics where we can identify like art and science. Maybe this nature of the managerial economics it deals with the microeconomics and what are the uses of the macroeconomics and multidisciplinary approach, perspective or normative discipline, management oriented and pragmatic approach. So these are the different analytical things which we have to identify in the characteristics of this managerial economics. So we come one and another of these characteristics. Like first we can say like maybe it's a art and science. So we can see like what is an art and what is a science. So we can see that science which is having a disciplinary, having some fixed rules, regulations and principles. But when we say it's like a art, so art is in a practical science which is having the practicality where based upon the situations, emotions, basic things, we can change it. The flexibility will be there. So when we see about these managerial economics, we have some of the elements which considers under the art, where we have the managerial theories, price levels, poverties, national income, which we can take the decisions by an individuals or maybe the country across based on the situation. We get an example like in the COVID situation. So we have been changed the many rules, regulations and other and taken the taken the decisions based upon the flexibility. So the decision making is done based upon what is going there. So that we'll consider as an art. In the economics also, every company has to enumerate itself or it should be make itself contrast or near to this environment what is going on. But when you say there are some principles like monetary policies, physical policies and some are other which are very stable and also having doesn't have any fluctuability. They are fixed or called as rigid like science. So that's why the nature of managerial economics deals with a sort with decision making technology requires some sort of flexibility and the policies and the procedures what we used in the organizations requires some rigidity. That's why we consider the first one like it is both art and science. And the next feature we enumerated like macroeconomics, microeconomics. So already we have seen what is a micro. It's related to the tiny thing like micro in the nature. The nature itself it is very small. Why? Because as we know these economics is having micro and macro. Micro means related to the individual and macro means that related to the overall economy or the levels or the problems what we have seen and the total economy. So here whatever we want to decide in case of managerial economics, I want to take one sector or a one firm in an organization. So I'll consider that sector as a micro one. I don't want to make it like in a macro, making all. So I want to take the relations relating to the decision making or I want to visualize the practical problems relating to that sector only. So that's why the main characteristics or one of the important characteristics of this managerial economics is micro in nature. Means I'll consider the total organization as a one and it is a small And in that only I want to see or what are the problems or challenges or practicality there in that problems and want to take the decisions. And the next one we can have the another thing like it is having some micro analysis also. Maybe I consider one part it is a macro and making it is a one, but we has to take into the external factors into the consideration also. Maybe I'm an internal firm in the micro sense factors which are related to the internal organization only. Internal what the company deals with the company's internal problems, internal challenges, internal working pattern. But when you comes under the macro analyzation, these one company has to face the external environment also, where that will affect the businesses or the firms. So that external environmental factors has like monetary policies. So the monetary policies basically we'll call or we'll consider it as the banking, central banking policies, central banking interest rates, increases, fluctuation, decreases. So each and everything. So the monetary policy is a factor which affects each and every organization capital. So when we take in any loans, advances from the banking and other, the interest rates will be affects. And the central banking decisions relating to the industrial development or the firm's development will affect our organization. So that's why we should consider the external factor, what changes was taking place in the monetary policy. And at the same way, the next one is the physical policy. The physical policy is that which we'll call it like a budget. So the total national budget. So every organizations, maybe we are having like a March, end of the March as in a budgetary sessions. So our budgeting period maybe starts from April to March. So at the end of the March, we are looking every organization. So what the government will give us in the budget means some favorable things will come in the budget, where some unfavorable things also. Actually, we'll see the budget is the estimation of revenue and expenditure only. So in case of budget, we'll call like revenue and expenditure. What you want to estimate. But in estimation, when we go for deficit of revenues or maybe there is an increased in the expenditure, then the government comes through imposition of taxation upon the different types of goods and services, and it want to stabilize its budget. So every firm will look at that what the government was giving. It was giving any sort of incentives or maybe increasing the taxes should be identified. This is an external one where we can't manage by the internal factors. And the next one, aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So here we can see that the total national level demands and supply of the goods and services to be considered. Why? Because if it is a deficit in the aggregate demand and supply is there, we can identify it as a management. So is there any chance of my organization to avail any opportunities? Maybe for examples, there is a definite of deficiency in case of supply of the electronic equipments. Maybe the electronic equipments relating to the any one particular aspects or deficit within our country. Then I can start up any enterprise and I can start supplying those and avail the opportunities. If deficit is there, in the budgetary sessions, they will provide some incentives like now central government in order to encourage the production level, that is India, Go India or Indian production level. So whatever they are giving is providing incentives or loans through Mudra Yojana and the Mudra development for women empowerment and also the unemployment generating schemes. So they are providing some incentives. So these sort of favorable things were also announced in the budget. So as an entrepreneur or as a micro level organization or as a manager, I should wait for these type of things in order to take the decisions. Next, we can see like trade cycles. So in case of these trade cycles, so already we have discussed what are the trade cycles means. These are the general variations or the fluctuations which are takes place in case of trade, increase or the decrease in case of supply and the demand of the products. So what is the variation was taking place and what are the issues related to that? So overall variation in the total production of any of the goods produced. Maybe for example, we will take like plastic industry. So the production of the plastic and in different aspects was banging today. Why? Because in order to make pollution free, so many of the things has been banging. So here, when you identify the trade cycle of the plastic industry, it we can see like downwards trend, and the other type like jute industries and other which we are making like alternative for the plastic and pollution free, these type of industries, the trade activities where we can see the upward trends were increased in their supply and the demand. So we should identify them such that my organization is getting or having any sort of opportunities or not. And along with that, we should identify the general price levels. So what are the general price levels? We has to identify if there was an increase or the decrease in the external environment. So based upon that, what the competitor is doing and what I should identify in case of my product. When we externally increase or the decrease was taking place, my product should also be turned, or my product should also be varied according to the external environment. So that's why we has to identify that what are the general price levels changes, etc. So we can say that these are the above macro factors which will deals in the business. So along with that, many factors will be there which comes under the external environment. So every firm or a manager or an economist of a managerial economics, when he want to take the decision, 100% he should consider what the external factors are coming. Is that external factors is favorable to me or not? If they are favorable, then I can utilize the opportunity. If they are unfavorable, then I should find the solution and make them it as an a favorable. Means we should take the challenges of external things and try to increase the efficiency within the organization. And the next managerial feature or the characteristics relating to this managerial economics is the managerial economics itself, it is normative in nature. Normative is the thing what like a questioning nature. So it will ask what ought to be, means what ought to be in the sense like outcome, what you got the outcome. So it suggested the businessman that after doing any specific activities or the specific thing in an organization, so have you outcome, that is whatever you received is the thing which you have been having achieved the specific goals what you have been identified in your business. Means first we have some goals in the organization. So as a manager, so we has to identify that what you have been the achieved outcome you have done in the organization. Based upon that, your main or the specific goals what you have kept in the business, you reached or not. So our decisions are correct and we are going in a perfect procedure in an organization and decision making is perfect, automatically we reach the goals of the organization. That's why we has to think what is a normative, means normally we has to identify the outcome, that is what we has to evaluate is business decisions whatever will take in the long term nature must and should have a value judgment. So value judgment in the sense like value judgment in the sense we has to identify that our business is going in a right motive and the right format. We are taking decisions which is to satisfy our shareholders or not. And at the same way, what the specific goals I have kept is I am satisfying that goals or not. So the value what we have started at the vision of the organization has been taking place due to my decision or not has to be identified. So when we are identifying that one, automatically we can say that these managerial economics is in a normative sense. Next we can say like pragmatic and a practical sense. So these managerial economics is always pragmatic, where we can consider itself it is having like some tools which will useful us to prove themselves in the practice, like practically. So tools what we are using in the managerial economics shows the practical solutions for a different problems where which we have been identified in the business or in the economical motives. So here this pragmatic or the practical approach why we require is in order to improve our decision making in the future. So practically when have seen the solutions for different problems what we are getting in the organization, future growth or the future perspective of the organization will be there. And at the same way, these managerial economics, it will also use some practical theories, methods and the laws in the economics, which will help us to solve the real problems in the business. Means here it will solve the various problems which are related to our business. So with the help of methodologies or the tools techniques given by these managerial economics helps for perfect or a good decision making in the organization. So it will also evaluate the various alternatives and improves the decision making in the future. By these practical analyzations or the practical approaches, so our decision making will becomes very strong. So I have been experienced the problems practically, then automatically a good solutions we can make in the future. And another one of the characteristics of these managerial economics is it is a multidisciplinary approach. Means it having an applications of both micro and macro. So when these two applications are there, the scope of these or the extent of these managerial economics maybe starts within a individual firms and it will reach to the aggregation of the nature. So it will deals with the many types of tools techniques which will comes under the different subjects where we can utilize or where we can see like these managerial economics deals with the mathematical solutions, problems, or some type of formulas we used in the economics. And at the same way, the statistical analysis tools, techniques are also being used in order to find the different solutions. Maybe we have the forecasting. That is a demand. So what is the demand of the market? What is the supply? So this demand and the supply of the market has been identified with the help of some statistical tools. So the statistics is also one of the approach where we can take in place of managerial economics. And at the same way, the operational research where we can identify that different research methodologies has been taken to solve the practical problems and some part of the accounting. So accounting nature or the business will deals with an accounting. We'll call accounting as in a language of the business. Yes. So the profit motive, price, discrimination, differentiation. So each and everything expenditures will comes under the accounting concepts. So some parts of the accounting will also be enumerated in the managerial economics and along with the theory of management. So managerial economics itself will call it as a business economics or the management economics where some part of the theories and the practical things in the management is also being taken part in this managerial economics. So that's why we'll call these managerial economics as a multidisciplinary consisting of involvement of different types of subjects in these economics which help us to take the decision making. And next one we can call like it is like managerial economics is both conceptual and metrical. So it is having a good concepts, outlines, framework, a theoretical sense is there when we want to identify the managerial economics features or any other things or any practical solution to the problem. So conceptually it is having a good analytical structure, and at the same way practicality and the metricality is also frameworked, like it will analyze, understand, solve the decision making problems of any business. So here the practicality or the decision making where they are having that both understandability. So practically, conceptually we are having a good knowledge and the structure, and that we can utilize in the practically by understanding this concept. We'll analyze them and solve that in case of decision making of any business. And it also will follows like quantitative or techniques for the various subjects or the problems of the business. Means it is having different types of methodologies where we can solve the different problems in the business. So that's why, so this is a both, we can call these economics as a both conceptual and also the metrical. And next, the basic characteristic feature of this one is like a theory of the firms. So it is basically theory of the firms we can call like the theory of the market. So what an individual firm was doing, what are the types of the market structures, and how these markets are affecting the firms. So this we can mainly enumerate it, and this characteristics of this managerial economics. So basically, these theory of the firms or the markets, whatever, will have the economic concepts which are related to the different problems in the organizations, and we should understand those problems, and after understanding these problems we should find some solutions, so that will help the solutions in order to achieve the various business goals. And these importance of these economic concept which will comes under the theory of the firms or the markets and all other will helps the economists or the managerial economics to go in a right path. So what are the concepts maybe related, mainly the economics concepts which are related, and this was like production, cost, revenues, market structures, prices, foreign trade policies, economic policies, employment, savings, investment. So all these means all macro elements and micro elements totally acts in this theory of the firm. So with this, thank you for this session.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.